I'm HeyWoah, and in recent Games Workshop news on the 40k side, Custodes as of right now will be accepting women into their ranks at last. Make no mistake, however, although this news is recent, they have always been there for 10,000 years. Just not in the game, or the art, or the books, or the models, or the lore. Now, regular viewers of my Age of Sigmar channel might be wondering why I care enough to make a video about this. Good question. 1. I don't. But the discourse has been so bad that I feel an adult's opinion might be useful here, and 2, it seems like 40k people will click on literally anything. Let's test it out. Whether or not it's a retcon is a red herring. It doesn't matter. Necrons had a retcon. It was great. They went from mindless Terminator ripoffs to machine body Quarians who killed and enslaved their own gods. That's sick. Dune had a retcon. It was shit. Brian Herbert's been writing the worst Dune books you've ever seen for 30 years after his father's death. Dune fans have been well ignoring his drivel the whole time. I'm reminded of Penny Arcade's theory on the difference between homage and ripoff, and I can attest here with my fine arts degree. The difference for a person between homage and ripoff is whether they like it or not. The same is true of retcons. If it's cool, it's good. If it sucks, it's bad. The reason a fan base tends to round down on them, tends to, in a vacuum, push against the idea of them, is simple. They do not trust those in charge to do a good job. In popular culture and media, it is not a surprise to find out someone has that default position. Is it a retcon, though? Not really. Basically filling a space of omission. For some reason, they just never mentioned any. According to my research, Custodes are not Space Marines, and so none of the Space Marine baggage gets to come along for this ride, such as the really stupid 1980s junk science trying to explain why it wouldn't work on girls. We can almost do this today. We're certainly closer to it than FTL travel. 40,000 years? Probably fine. On the theme side, Astartes and Sisters of Battle mirroring the Catholic Church's priests and nuns, silly but sacred gender divides appropriately underpinning their massive, decaying regime, makes for wonderful world building. The rigidity of a silly divide like this is part of the point. This is neither an efficient empire nor a good one. It follows the rules, even if the rules are monstrous. That's commentary. Games Workshop took everything they didn't like about the British Empire and turned the dial up to 11. That's the satire. Theocracy, bureaucracy, jingoism, propaganda. Blessed is the mind too small for doubt is so on the nose it could be a dialogue from Helldivers. And that's why it's fun. But that's also why the idea of copying our real-life progress into this horrible world is sometimes a poor fit. Should women be allowed to be priests in real-life Earth? Yeah. In the grimdark future games, Space Marine chapters poking fun at the sexist history of that real-life church on Earth? Probably not. Don't let them forget about it. How much satire can you remove before it becomes its own propaganda? The backwardness of much of the Imperium is the joke, the cautionary tale. Glad we're over that. British humor is self-deprecating, dry absurdism, so maybe it's hard for other cultures to pick up on it, unless it's of the flamboyant Monty Python kind. On all of these points, I'm mostly against female Space Marines. I think making a kinder, gentler Imperium that adopts our modern, progressive ways weakens the satire, the historical religious commentary especially, and themes of how and why they aren't the good guys. Luckily, as I said at the onset, unlike Space Marines, Custodes have none of such baggage. They're the Royal Guard, meant to be the best and brightest superhumans ever. There was no rule, they just never mentioned any. Okay. Never mentioned Tau before they had always been there either. I shrug. Most of you probably shrugged as well. Fake outrage from mostly far-off secondaries. Slightly unnerving virtue posting that ends up boosting the signals of both sides as far and wide as they can. But HeyWoah, you implied you don't think there should be female Space Marines. Aren't you concerned that you are agreeing with people who literally hate women? No. And not only because we don't actually agree. Reasons matter. Here comes that film degree again for an example. The new Star Wars trilogy sucks. I'm not going to change my opinion on that because some other group hates new Star Wars on account of it having a purple hair woman in it. Some nonsense about the woke agenda, not a relevant technical film critique in sight. It's like a kid getting a math problem right, but when you ask them to show their work, the bottom half of the page is covered in piss. If you always think the opposite of what your enemies think, then they still control you. It's a childish stance. I want college to be more affordable. I don't think forgiving exponentially increasing amounts of debt forever is a good way to go about doing that. I don't care what team you're on, I care if you're right. If your ideas will actually work. Hey, here's an idea. I stream tonight. Let's talk about what we'd like for them to retcon in Age of Sigmar. I see a lot of room for improvement. Here's another idea. Buy a shirt, will ya?